Cisco Firepower Threat Defense 630, the attack series, Rapid Threat Containment. All right, this is really cool, right? So you can actually build correlation policies to trigger action against an asset if an IPS event was triggered. So you can see we've been connected here for about 10 hours, VPN on the network. And what I'm doing here is I'm going into Firepower Management Center and I'm looking at the correlation rules. Now this has already been created, but what you could do is add remediation modules, which is PX Grid, that talks to ISE and says, ISE, if I want to take action, do something. And that could mean quarantine, which means a lot of different things, from shutting down the port to moving him into an isolated VLAN, etc. So that policy, attack from client, includes a rule, and that a rule is called attack from client. Again, this has already been pre-configured, but I'm going to go in here to show you what it's kind of made of. So when we're looking at it, you can see here we give it a name, right? Maybe a description, and then we've got other elements we can add: connection tracker, user qualification, host profile qualification. But really what we're looking at is we're saying select the type of event for this rule. So if an intrusion event occurs, and you can see there's all kinds of different options, malware event, etc., and the source IP address is of the following network, right? I want to maybe do something with that information, right? Here we can add a different levels of complexity, right, in regards to the correlation rule. So it becomes really, really interesting. So we could say destination IP or source IP, or geolocation. We can do, you can see them all here, right? Intrusion policy, priority. You can do it based on SID. You can do it based on impact flag. So lots of different options here. So you can make these rules a little bit more defined or a little more complex, right? And just say, you know what, maybe the source IP address is this, and maybe the destination country is from, or source country is from, right? And you can add these in it and or etc. We're not going to make any changes to it. We're just looking at that source IP network and any intrusions that might happen there. Now, when we go back to policy management, what we want to do is enable that rule, right? So that rule that we created in rule management's defined, and then you create a policy called attacks from client policy, and you add the rule and then the remediation portion, right? In this case, integration with ISE. Once it's enabled, now it's ready to be used. So what happens here is we're going to go back, and you saw this in video 1, we're going to actually run that shell shock exploit against an asset. Now we've run the exploit, and what should happen is that we'll get an IPS event, and in that IPS event then kicks off the correlation rule, right? And it should trigger an action on that asset leveraging Identity Services Engine. So in our case, what it's actually doing is moving it into a quarantine VLAN, right, or a remediation VLAN, so where it can get addressed. And you can see here, we're only been connected for a few seconds now because it just reconnected as we were looking here, right? So any connect did automatically reconnect, but what it's done is when it reconnected, it's actually restricted. That could be through a downloadable ACL, but in this case, when they connect, you can see all they get when they try to go to cisco.com, for example, is the remediation portal. And again, that's driven from ISE. So that's pretty cool, right? It's not just about generating alerts and trying to drill in and find out what happened. There's a lot of times you want to take action against an asset at 2 in the morning when a printer starts acting up and starts communicating maybe with a CNC server. So here we're looking at correlation events. We can see the source IP destination. We see the drop in inline, and we can see there's that bash CGI injection, and that happens to be that shell shock exploit that we, or vulnerability that we actually took advantage of. And you can see the policy and the rule that's associated with it. So pretty cool stuff, right? Talk about automation. This is real stuff that happens today with Cisco Security.